Babylon, and I've done my best, so everything's alright inside. Oh, every morning, I rise, I stare at the sun. I know it is a blessing. So when the evening comes, I lift up my eyes to this, I'm blessed, oh man. With my two hands in the air, as far as I can.
Well, very good evening to you and welcome to this program of Walter Rodney Groundings. I'm your host, Dion Abrams, and with me on the program this evening is Brother Takuma Ogonse, and together we'll be talking about the current political situation, particularly in relation to the Working People's Alliance. Welcome to the program, Brother.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be here, and I guess today's program is a very special program.
Yeah, indeed. So, the elections are basically over. The fact is, there seems to be some kind of concern over the fact that the declared results have not yet been gazetted. But before, so what was the spin-off of that, the non-gazetting of the results?
Well, to be honest, I can't say much on that in terms of its technical implications.
Mm-hmm.
But on the surface, gazetting the results is part of the legal process to complete the elections cycle. But I don't know if because there's still an election challenge, okay, pending, okay, whether that in any way may affect it, I don't know.
But it seems to, because the suggestion is that no petition can be filed unless the results are gazetted. And so it seems to be a ploy to prevent that, because it should have been gazetted within 15 days.
Yes.
And that 15-day period would have passed already.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It may be a clever maneuver by the PPP
yeah.
to stymie the process. But I guess the lawyers will know what they got to do.
Yeah.
They go back to the courts. They go back to the courts. I don't know.
Certainly. Well, let's talk about this, because there is some issue, well, a number of issues in relation to the APNU, in particular the coalition, and the eventual, fallout after the elections. But this APNU that we're talking about, what was its genesis, so that people can really understand?
Well, okay, and I think I'm glad you asked the question, because we also have a lot of younger Guyanese are entering the political fray. And the country is basically a young country in terms of population, and sometimes you need to make this historical step back in order for people to appreciate what is actually unfolding in the present. The nation will remember that in 2005, 2006, we were referring to 2006 elections, and there was a big issue about the quality of the voters list. And around that issue, we had developed a broad-based unity of political parties and other stakeholders in a movement which we call One Guyana. And the One Guyana movement was intended to be a broad-based opposition and civil society movement, okay, fighting for a clean electoralist, and probably being able to mount a slate to enter in the 2006 elections. The AFC was formed, and they was also part of that. The WP was part of it, PNC was part of that, and other groups. And the slogan was, if I remember the slogan, was no verification, no elections. That was the rally slogan of the no verification, no elections. But when the PPP announced the election date, the AFC announced that they're participating in the elections, and they broke up the One Guyana movement, and the PNC decided they couldn't allow the AFC to go into the elections and to take advantage of their constituency. So the PNC announced that they're too going into the elections. Now this left the WP in a very awkward position, because we were not prepared for elections. We have not even discussed elections. We were committed to the One Guyana initiative and the fight for a clean voters list. So when the election was sprung upon us, and the and both AFC and the PNC decided that they go into the elections without the voters list, without the verification. The issue came up with what the WPA can do, and the question was whether the WPA would work in a coalition and enter the elections with the PNC. Corbyn was then the presidential candidate for the PNC. And I remember we had a meeting at Congress Place where we met the PNC executive. And the WPA explained that, look, we as a party have never discussed how we're going to deal with the 2006 elections. Therefore, we are not prepared. We got no mandate from our party. And we told them that we began a process domestically, but we have to have a consultation with our members abroad. And we told them that we're sending a high-level team to New York to bring together North American comrades from both US and Canada, okay, to discuss the matter. And depending upon what that discussion, decide, we will be better able to see whether we could work with the PNC in this electoral alliance for 2006. Well, I was not able to attend the meeting because the Americans didn't grant me a visa, even though I went to America about 2 times before. But for some reason, they just didn't grant me a visa. I'm making this point just to say that what I'm saying from here onward is not direct information. I am reporting on what subsequently was reported. Okay. So it was reported that the WPA met in New York, and there's a lot of problems. People couldn't perceive. They understand that the WPA could work with the PNC in a wider coalition with other forces, but this idea that WPA and the PNC mending fence and going into the elections, people felt it was a betrayal of Rodney. And there was a lot of heated debate among the WPA comrades. African and Indian comrades cried, burst into tears. They couldn't come to grips with it. Okay. And later in the day, and this is important, I want the country and I want PNC supporters to hear this. Many times people feel that politics is public business and people business. People must know how things evolve. And I've told that when it come to afternoon time, clearly there's no decision possible coming out of it. A comrade raised the question. Say, man, look, there's a lot of emotion in this discourse, but we're political people. You mean there's no condition which the WPA will consider working with the PNC? We can't find no political condition? And he raised the question. He said, if the PNC was to offer the WPA the prime ministerial spot, would you all agree? It led to a jerk of people back into politics.
Okay.
But then people said no, the PNC would never agree to them. So it was, but at this point it's important why you raised it, because subsequently you can see the importance of it. So people said no, it can't happen. It didn't happen. So the meeting broke up with no decision. Dr. Rodney, who led the delegation, he returned speedily because we were fighting now within days to get a list to get into GCOM. So this is a narrow window. Okay. So he rushed back here and he met Corbyn. Unfortunately, he met Corbyn by himself. So he and Corbyn, and he reported to Corbyn what happened in the meeting. And you see? Now, subsequently, this is months later, okay? A senior PNC person met myself and Desmond Trotman on the road and stopped me. And said, man, look, I want to ask you a question. I want a straight answer in WPA. Did the WPA in 2006 insist that they want the presidential candidate in order to join with the PNC in the 2006 election? We said no. We said that with the WPA executive had a discussion. We said no. Now this is important because apparently whatever Rodney told Corbyn,
okay,
when Corbyn reported to the PNC executive, it came over like though the WPA was insisting on the presidential position as a means to agreeing.
Oh, okay.
and it led to some bad blood. Now, we only understood the bad blood and this problem months after, after the elections. Sometimes they give it as it is. So it led to some bad blood because, the PNC obviously would not agree to concede that. And the WPA executive would never ever think about making such a demand. But however, in the communication with Rupnarain and Carbon, this is what transpired, and it led to bad blood. So the PNC went into the elections by themselves, and we know the results. They've lost. There was the largest loss to them in the elections. Now, coming up to 2011, we tried to see how best we could correct the mistakes of 2006. And we began...
But the loss is important. I want you to focus on that because people like Rickford Burke and those are saying that, the coalition, they're making it seem as the coalition was no consequence, that the PNC was the party, that the WPA contributed nothing to...
Yeah, but we reached there yet. We reached the WPA contribution because that was a PNC going into the election by itself.
But the
loss because the AFC was able to take away some of the votes.
12 seats, I think.
They end up getting they end up getting about 6 seats.
6 or something.
But it took away a lot of PNC supporters. So that was the lowest showing of the PNC in its parliamentary history. Okay? So we headed now to 2011. And reflecting on what happened in 2006, many of us in the WPA began to work within the WPA for a more realistic approach to the Guyanese problems. Okay? And it became clear, especially when the phantom killing started and the state violence and the state killing started, the WPA realized that, look, the PPP have got out of hand. And one of the things that they're using against the African community is playing the division between the PNC and the WPA. And they're taking advantage of it. And we felt that, look, we have to make it clear to the PPP in the country that we're not fools. And the WPA understand exactly the game you're playing. And we have a view of the country. And we're prepared to work with the PNC, okay, to resolve national problems, okay? And that was the basis to where we work with them in the movement against the killings and so on and so on. In the meantime, Trotman and Lance Carberry was mandated by both parties to work on developing the document for a unity, the APMU document. And they spent numerous months and umpteen hours those two comrades spent working on this document. So we reach a point where we have achieved a framework for a unity. Now, the next step now is to make this thing practical, as electoral unity. In the subsequent discussions between the PNC and the WPA, our two top leaders at the time, Dr. Thomas told the PNC that he's not interested in any of the top positions. So it means that he interested in either president or prime minister. Rupnarain was in the meeting and he said the same thing. And this was their personal positions, not a party position, but a personal position. So the PNC left that meeting and reported to the executive that the two top WPA leaders show no interest in the two top positions. And they assume that based on that, the WPA will come forward in the electoral alliance even without those two positions. And this is important because it wasn't a party position.
Okay.
It was the two leaders expressing their personal position. All right, so the PNC was working on that understanding. It became clear to us at some point as the 2000 election started to draw closer, that we're not going to get this electoral alliance with this APMU because the PNC, in our view, couldn't find a credible Indian candidate. You see? I remember Dr. Thomas was out of the country and Rupnarain was out of the country. And myself and Desmond, as senior persons in the executive, get a resolution moving the executive to demand that Rupnarain withdraw his objection of not wanting to run in the prime ministerial position. We felt it was necessary, and our arguments was straight. And I want to say it as it is. We felt as African people who have fought side by side with the PPP when the Indians was under distress with the PNC, now that the African community feels under distress, okay, by the PPP, the WPA has a credible Indian candidate, and he should come forward and to demonstrate solidarity with our African community. It's on the basis we decided we're going to force Rodney to rethink his position. Me, Trotty, and I think David was in the country. Dr. Hines was thinking in the country at the time. And we went to Congress Place, and we asked a meeting with Carbon, and he bring, a small delegation, and we analyze how we see the situation. We told them plainly, we don't think the PNC can find a credible Indian candidate, and we said the WPS still have a credible Indian candidate in Rodney. Carbon reminded us about the decisions that Rodney took and Thomas took, which he communicated to the PNC executive, and they were working on the basis of that. And he said, even though he understands our political arguments is sound, he can't give us no assurance that the PNC will change their position.
Okay.
But he committed to try to get a change. So we left with, he committed to work with the PNC executive to accept Rodney, and we left committed to get report to change his position. Okay, as the thing unfolded, we get the weeks to the election. There was a massive meeting at Stabrook Market there. The young people used to keep mobilizing the meeting. I see Carbon cutting through the crowd. And he comes, oh, go on. Get through. And you see he smile. And we hug up. We said, how we make it? And we felt good that we've done something, not only for the two party, but we've done something for the country. Right. That this here will be transformative. And I ain't got to go further. We went in the elections with Rodney and Granger, and we see what we do in 2011. And as a result of regaining the votes that the PNC lost, we put pressure on the AFC, who was saying they will never join with any of the major parties. Eventually, they had to come on by 2015, and we had the good transformation movement, where we have the coalition and we defeat the PPP. Now, that was the contribution that we made to the APMU. And so to deal with the APMU is not an easy matter for us. We have invested tremendous in it. And I have great respect from the Comrade Carbon. We work hard to fly this thing.
So why is it that people are saying that the contribution of WPA was...
Because they don't know. You see, the PNC doesn't educate its membership on these matters. You see? So people don't know. So without my initiative, me and Tratzman initiative in the WP executive to get right to change his position and to make his service available, it would be no APMU. You see? So I mean, that's why I think that we got to talk some about these things. Now, what was the WPA view about the thing? The WPA, remember, we had worked with the PPP and the PCD, we bring down we get free and free elections, we bring down the Burnham government, defeat the PNC in 92. But in the 92 elections, the racial voting returned. And the multiracial constituency that WPA was built from in the late 79, 80s get destroyed. All the Africans vote for the PNC, majority Indians vote for the PPP, and the WPA get wiped out. There's no, 92 shows that there's no multiracial constituency the way we have thought before. And the WPA only got into parliament through the Amerindian votes. It's only Amerindian votes bring it to parliament, even though most of our activation was on the coast and in the city. But the polarization in 92 destroyed us. Now, as a political party, we had to rethink our approach to the politics and multiracial position. And we came to the position that, look, these two parties ain't going to go in a hurry. The voting patterns are not going to change in a hurry. So you have to be politically realistic. But race and racial voting has negative consequences on the country. So we have to find a way of accommodating the reality, but reducing the negative effects of the reality. And we felt that one of the ways you could do that is through constitution reform, and we're going to take all systems that even when you don't vote race, the constitution says these two race parties got to sit down together and run the country, share the executive responsibility, and the WPA began to push power sharing as a solution. In so doing is important. It meant that the WPA was saying to the nation, we can't defeat the PNC and the PPP in a hurry, but we are prepared to work with them. and we're prepared to shape a politics that will force a national government so that the country could resolve some of the economic challenges and the historical injustices. But you had to correct it at the political level first. So that was a WPA view, okay, why we need the APMU and we need the working with the thing. It is a way to address the racial problems and to protect each racial community against domination from the other. So that was what drove our politics at the time on that.
All right. So, 2015, the parties basically we had the APNU, AFC, and they were able to defeat the PPP. What were the political fallouts? Because the WPA in the coalition after the elections had some issues that they needed resolved. What were those?
Okay, let me just make a step back.
Mm.
Now, in the APMU, the WPA was the second most important party. Okay? And remember, okay? Now, once the AFC showed an indication that they're willing to work with us, it meant that the WPA had to step back to accommodate the AFC, which we did very gracefully. God, we understand that it is necessary for the country's unity.
Stepping back in the sense of?
That we concede that the next most important position will have to be given to the AFC.
The Prime Ministerial
position and everything else. You know, that we have to be realistic. That, you know, if we're going to spin this thing, the AFC will have to be given this rule. Now, we, as political people, we understood the reality. The country is more important than the parties, and we needed to defeat the PPP, so we were willing to do it. And we had no problems in doing it. We said to the country at the press conference, I made it very clear that this is the WPA position. Okay? Now, in the 2015 negotiations, the AFPMU had to concede 40% to the AFC. Now, that's a gigantic percentage, which everybody in the APMU was concerned with, and that, you know, the AFC is asking for too much, because we were convinced that they can't bring enough support to justify 40%. But it's politics. They got the franchise, and you need them. We need to defeat the PPP, so you concede. Okay? And we happily conceded, even though people were concerned. But the problem starts now in the APMU. APMU parties, especially WPF, felt that after the negotiations with the AFC, and we signed the Commonsburg Accord, Comrade Granger would have summoned a meeting with the APMU parties, the 5 parties in the APMU, and said, comrades, well, you know, we have to concede 40% to the AFC. It means that we as a group have 60%. You see? Let me discuss how we're going to deal with this 60% on our side. Okay? We as the big party, we want 55% of the 60. So it left 5% for y'all. Y'all work out how we're going to work out. If you get 2%, you get 1%. Some arrangement. That never happened. So we negotiate with the AFC, concede, you know, political space to them and everything, but within ourselves at the APMU party, disrespect was shown to the APMU party, and not a similar process was implemented. So that's where the stress began to get serious in 2015. But we're facing an elections, and the WPA, I could speak for the WPA, even though we were concerned, we didn't prepare to rock the boat because we didn't want to miss the moment of defeating the PPP. So after we won the elections now, we thought that Comrade Granger, the PNC, would have called a meeting of the APMU parties and said, comrades, look, we won. And this is how we're going to do business. You see? This is what you could expect, so they could go back to your party and you could do your planning for the next elections. You know where in the state you're going to function, you know where you're getting, and so and so and so and so. We would never had a discussion and never know where you're getting until you get something. No, that is not the way to run a partnership or a coalition. Parties need to know where they're getting so they could go back to their party and they could plan their business. The PNC knew what they're getting, the AFC knew what they're getting, they could plan their business. But the smaller parties were treated, you know, badly. As we in matter. and we said not. We complain, but we make it a big issue because we felt the country just will defeat the PPP, and if the WPA go out there and keep noise about these things, a lot of the constituents ain't gonna understand. They can say we're being spoiled child and we consume what we sell. But we knew that the germs for the destruction, okay, of the coalition, the APMU, was being sown. And once the germ for the destruction of the APMU coalition was being sown, what you're doing there is you guarantee the PPP victory at the next elections. Because remember, it's only a few thousand votes that separate us from them. You see? So that is where the problem started. But the WPA tried its best not to be spoilers and to thing.
In essence, what you're saying that, I mean, the announcement of who should be, what seats you're getting, and what ministry and all of that, those were never discussed.
No, we never discussed. You just, you know, in any coalition, man, and any partnership, people's got to know what we sign on to. It's basic, and I mean, you don't have to be no political scientist. You pick up, you go on YouTube and you type in coalition politics, you'll see in every part of the world. You can't strike a coalition, and I can't go back to my party and tell my party what we're getting out of this agreement. It's basic. But because of the nature of Guyana and to defeat the PPP, none of us could defeat the PPP separately. And if you wanted to put an end to the PPP 20-something years rule, people had to bite the bullet. And the WPA was prepared to bite the bullet in the interest of the country, and particularly the interest of the African community. I want to make it clear. You see? Clear. And I could tell you, and we got to talk these things. So the WPA was placed in this awkward position where ascendancy was given to the AFC quite correctly. We had to decide, look, how we going to function within this new dispensation. And we tried to work out a way, and I think we did work out a way where we were never problematic. Neither the AFC or the APM could ever say the WPA make any unreasonable demand throughout this whole 5 years of the government. None of them could say it. I've said it in public. Let any one of them say at any point in the process the WPA was disruptive and the WPA make any demands that was unreasonable. We never. But we are political people. We were watching at the election results, and we knew that we beat the PPP by a few thousand votes, but 3,000 something votes, something like that. And we knew that given the criminalization of the state, given the way the people run the country, where they transfer significant wealth to the Indian community, and a lot of the Indian business, Indian hustling business was tied up with state funds and so on, that any new government that go in power and got to correct the situation will be offending some Indians. That's what Jagdeo, this is the nastiness that Jagdeo leave us in. You know, it is one of the most wicked political entrapment this country have ever had, where a ruling party deliberately structure economy in such a way that you give one ethnic group a significant advantage to the point that if any other government seeks to correct it, it's going to run problems with the ethnic group. And when we in the WPA studied the election results, we felt that, look, we're in trouble here. But we couldn't get the APMU or the AFC to discuss the nature of the victory, because we felt that we couldn't calculate for the next election that we're going to get that amount of Indian votes. The AFC will have none of it because they feel if you argue with them, you're playing them down. The PNC, even though they're interested in the argument, they ain't to push it because they feel the AFC may just left the coalition until they broke up. So we never had a chance to analyze the victory and to understand where the weakness lies and how to strategize to compensate. So that discussions never happen, you know. So we come to 2000. So by the time the first year, you know, we did on this government. From the first year, we were saying this government is in trouble. And you and I, all of you on Groundings, Trotman, everybody, we were expressing our concerns. So we come to the 2020 elections. We entered those elections, in our view in the WPA, that we were fighting for our life. When we listened to PNC people and Comrade Granger and others, and the AFC, we get a sense that they believe that this election is already won. And we believe that the Granger probably felt he already win these elections. And our experience in Guyanese politics was telling us that these elections are going to be a ding-dang fight to win the PPP. And it could go anyway. That's what we experienced been telling us.
So what initiative we took in based
Well,
upon that?
you couldn't take much.
We started an initiative.
You started, but you couldn't take much. We started to say, look, 2 years before the government had to deal with the elections, we said to them, you know, in our historical constituency, there's about 10 to 15% of our constituents got problems with the government. They're disappointed. You understand? They feel that nothing have changed significantly in their life. And we make promises. And we should go back to the people, explain the difficulties, and to ask them for forgiveness and to understanding, and to pledge that we won't correct it. They will have none of that. None of that. They felt that the government record is enough to run by, okay, and we could win these things. Right? Now, in a situation like that, the WPA could do very little. Because you doesn't want to break up, you don't want to be the spoilers. Okay? So we had to go along with the flow. Okay. So we entered those elections and we entered the election crisis.
No, but we began keeping meetings
Yeah.
outside of the APNU
Yeah.
to try to...
But we do more than that. We give them the cash transfer idea.
Yeah.
Where Dr. Thomas, as an economic specialist, and he understands oil, he projected that every Guyanese household could get they could get $5,000 annually, okay, when oil kick up at a certain point. And that was a very powerful rallying call, and we did it not only for election opportunism. When we study the economy, one of the problems that the African economy has is that even though Indian economy, because a lot of it is based in commerce and in agriculture, they get bulk money. At every crop, an Indian family or farmer get bulk money. And with bulk money, you could pay some of your debts, you could bank some, and you could use some for investment. Most African people work for salaries, and you don't get bulk money. And we see the cash transfers putting bulk money in the hands of the African community and all Guyanese, of all races and of all things. But the idea is you're giving the African Amerindian community bulk money. So every year, a family know, I can get this check from the state, from the oil thing, and I could plan for it. If I got to repair my roof, I could repair my roof. If I got a son and he ain't got to work, I could buy a wheat cutter for you. I got a young lady who, they just cosmetology, this thing with cosmetology, with hairdressing. You could repair a part of the yard in the house, put up a little saloon for you. So you could do things that wouldn't affect your bread and butter income. And we felt it was a good way to trigger, economic initiative in African communities, Amerindian communities, and poor people in generally of all races. We said it to them. Granger rejected for over a year, and so he played, ball with it. He didn't understand what it means and this and that. And coming up to the elections, we eventually get a week before the election, or 2 weeks before the elections, we get him to put in the manifesto. And he watered it down. And I'm being frank. And everybody could judge what I'm saying. Comrade Granger at no public meeting ever mentioned cash transfer. It was not permitted on the APMU platform. They banished it. And they banished it because it came from the WPA. That's our view. Because we could see no political reason. This thing was very popular in the community. You're facing an elections where, you need to give some assurances to your constituents. And you have something that could help you to get votes. But because it comes from the WPA, you kick it away. And you risk losing in the elections simply for your spite or your dislike of the WPA. It is only we in the WPA who, we got to talk these things frank, man. they had set up a ploy where they allocate, okay, some responsibilities to WPA. Okay, we take charge to play a big role on the East Coast, where we use WPA resources and Kodaki
Organize all
yourself
the
and organize
meetings.
the meetings and equipments and so on. So WPA play a major role on the East Coast with WPA own resources and personnel and so on. But when you look at the allocation of WPA people to speak at meetings, APMU official meetings, all like me, I think they signed me to more than 5 meetings, so a whole campaign. And what they were doing, as we, from our point of view, was trying to minimize the WPA contribution. So at the end of the day, you can't ask so much. You don't do nothing much.
Imagine I spoke at
You
one
understand?
meeting.
You understand?
I went to Yarracabra, and then I spoke at a meeting at, just by Little Diamond there. And I got a call from a PNC official saying, man, the people like your presentation and they want you to be at all the meetings. I never hear back from them.
No. There's trouble, there's danger, there's trouble. So,
Never hear back from them at
so
all. You know?
we met, and you know the exact way we met, and we said, look, winning this election is important, regardless of the treatment. And we said that when the WPA people are not assigned on the APMU platform.
When you went all the way to Linden and weren't,
yeah,
weren't even allowed to speak.
That's not a story.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we said, look, when we are not called to speak on the APMU platform, those of us who are available, we use the WPA additional equipments and we other speakers and we will keep WPA meetings fighting for the APM. They didn't like it. But we insist for 2 reasons. We felt that we couldn't afford to lose these elections, and 2, we want to tell them that WPA have a political independence and a will to fight on its own. So it's 2 points we wanted to make to them. That we are responsible, we're committed to the coalition, we want to defeat the PPP, and you are playing games, and we're going to use the resources out there to help you. But at the same time, we want you to know, we ain't get being defeated, we ain't lose, we will to fight. We could fight on our own. So that was the 2 clear political messages we said we wanted to send to them. And we did a tremendous work trying to get in our constituencies where people had doubts to bring them back home. Bring them back home. And I'm telling you, at the 5 meetings that they assigned to me, I only was able to speak and end a speech at 1 meeting. And there's in Fields of Fire where I live. And the PNC comrades, they know me and so. The first meeting I spoke to, replacing Dr. Hines, by the well, in East Rhinefeld or West Rhinefeld, what is called it then. I was to be the last speaker. When I go on the platform and I start to speak, I began to raise the question about the responsibility the people got to the coalition to victory, and the responsibility the coalition leaders got to the people to victory. And I began to raise the questions of some of our shortcomings. We're not a perfect government, we had some shortcomings and so on, and asking people to, and people was very keen listening. There's a key PNC official, I don't want to be too personal. She was there because she imported in Georgetown. She's just sitting. They cut me halfway. Stop me. I ain't got to finish this speech, you know. I just did half because, you're the last speaker. You hear what everybody say. Therefore, you got to, you organize the speech to tie the thing up. They cut me. And that pattern continued to every other meeting. I go to Borbis, up the bank, can't complete a speech. And at Linden now, they allow me to speak. I'm going to tell you why they allow me to speak. People must know these things. They must know these things. We have had a meeting because the WP executive have been under a lot of pressure. We got to come straight to the PNC and Comrade Green to understand the WP have the right to nominate its representatives to Parliament and the region, and this thing has been happening for all of these years, can't continue. And we had a meeting with him and some PNC leaders, okay, and we struck an agreement. And we felt good. We reported to the executive that, look, we think we solved this problem. We think he was genuine and think he solved this problem. And I like to be fair. He honored it in terms of the national top-up list. The way we present the national top-up list, we get it as we present it. So he honored that part of it. But what they do is take off the WPA Region 10 Stanley Humphrey or Stanley Collins from the Region 10 list. Okay, which meant that it was the first time in WPA electoral history we had no representation in Region 10. I wrote Comrade Granger, draw it to his attention, and asked him to speak to Abner Ali and to correct it. He refused to correct it. And we had to enter. So when I was to speak at Linden, it's me and Stanley Humphrey going into the meeting. And they calculate that once I go up on the platform, I will have to explain to Lindeners why Mr. Collins is not on the APMU list. I had to do it. There's no way I could avoid it. Respect for the man and respect for the WPA. I would have had to spend at least 2 or 3 minutes explaining why. And they worked that out. And what did they decide to do? Never call me to speak. I then the crowd are waiting. Never call me with the close. And I didn't speak. Yes, I mean, that's the treatment they give you. And I dare anyone of them to come and tell me it's different. And you see, we got to talk these things. The WPA, after we come to power in 2015, we sent 10 names to Comrade Granger for employment consideration. Among those names, we had 2 Guyanese, overseas Guyanese, Indian Guyanese, comrades we want to bring back. These are people who have high-class skills. So whatever work you give them, they're going to justify it. You're begging for patronage, but if you find a job for them, they're going to come back and do political work, and we need them to open up some work in the Indian communities for 2020 elections. So this is how we work in the executive, that if we get these 2 comrades some employment in Guyana, okay, which they're qualified to do, we're begging, that is not square pegs and round holes, these are people with technical skills, that we will be able to use them in the Indian community to rebuild our connections with Indian community. Those 2 names was on the list of 10. 5 years passed, Granger never addressed not one person from the list. Not one person. He never called me, even though we raised it subsequently with him. He never even called me, said, WPA, this list there, give me some idea you are thinking about this thing. So for 5 years, he got a list with 10 WPA names to consider for possible employment. He never addressed it. And if you watch for the 5 years, the WPA, as a result of, we say, politics, only get but 8 people employed in the state, from minister to cleaner. That is the totality of involvement, the compensation. And despite all of that, we stuck it out because the country is more important than the party. But these things it's not so much about the spoils of the elections. Unfortunately, we got to discuss it this way because after the elections, there's certain logic that follow. You got to begin to get a list for parliament, and you got to get this and thing. And this present crisis come logically, the timing has nothing to do with WP. The timing is a result of the logic of the election cycle. So the elections finish. We expect in the APMU to have a discussion on why we lose the elections. That discussion never happened. And to map out a way forward. Up to now, we have no discussion, no analysis of why we lost the elections. We have no analysis of the way forward. But you will open the paper and you hear Comrade Granger address some PNC leadership meeting, and he announced a way forward. And then he tell the nation that it's an APMU parties are committed to the way forward. I mean, that is disrespectful. I mean, you must know that you can't treat people that way, man. And it's even disrespectful to his own self as a politician. You can't go in public and make them statements where you know it is not factual. And people will eventually have to come out and to clear the air. So it's like nothing changed, that even though you lost power, when people will expect that you'll be more realistic, more willing to consult, more willing to get unity and so, it gets worse. So we reached a point where the WPA had to write them and asking them, about the representation. And then we were told that our chairperson is one of the persons who go into parliament. But that was not the understanding. At the meeting I told you before with Ian Granger and the PNC, we made it clear to him that Tabitha is a minister and she will be responsible for political relationships at the governmental level with the state. It is unfair in our view to have she as a minister and deal with party matters, because she got to deal with your boss. Granger is your boss. And their cabinet colleagues. So she's in an awkward position. We told them that on party matters, they're dealing with me. And they said, oh, they understand. So I sitting and waiting for the call. When they're going to call me to discuss, with WPA want after this process, how WPA see it, Never happened. All you hear in public that a list is made public and one WPA person is on there for the National Assembly and one for the region. Totally, it's a violation of all the agreements you establish. You know what I mean? And it is hurtful and painful because it is very, apart from being disrespectful, man, it is giving the PPP the ammunition that they need to crush me. And this is being done by the PNC leadership and Comrade Granger in the context of he conceded plain technical language. But the fact is that we had to give up power without fighting for power sharing to protect the African community and the wider APMU AFC constituency. We throw them under the bus to the PPP. That is what we did in political terms. Let me be straight. And in the context of that, you got to salvage a unity. And to do that, because that in itself is problematic. That in itself is problematic. Then you can't show greater disrespect for your partners and then expect peace and expect people to take it. Now, look at this thing about this. And I'm trying to be, I don't want to be personal with Comrade Granger. I have great respect for him. He helped us to win, he helped us to lose. I don't have no deal. And it's natural. No human is perfect. But once you're a national leader and you're a leader of people, you're open to scrutiny. Now, when you read what he said that each party was supposed to bring 7,000 votes. Not so. No party in the APMU agreed to that. How the APMU party is going to determine how much votes they bring when we go to the electorate together? There's no mechanism to know whether people vote for the WPA, they vote for Sharma party, or they vote for GAP. So there's no way you could determine whether X party bring Y among the votes. So how small parties will agree to them? I mean, and what's worrying me is that he believes that you can sell that to the country and the world. Any political scientist will know you're talking stupid, this man. You can't have a coalition where all of you going on a joint slate, and you're going to know exactly what votes individual party bring. You only can know that if you fight separately, like how the jointer parties fight separately, where they know what they bring and then they come together. The APMU, we go together, so there's no way small parties can know what they bring. But this is the critical point. We developed that argument to deal with the AFC. Remember, we have conceded in the first Communist Bloc accord 40% to them. They come back to the negotiations, want the same 40%. And we developed the model of telling them, look, man, to get the average seat in this elections, you got to get about 7,000 votes. And for the seats that you got the last time, if you multiply it by 7,000, you can't really justify it. So this 7,000 model was developed to use against, which we used against the AFC, to force them into, realism. And when we don't achieve that now, and we get back 2 seats or whatever we get back for the AFC, we reduce them to 30%. Granger now turn back and use up on the APMU parties, which was never the intention. Never the intention. There's no agreement. No small parties in the APMU would agree that they got to bring 7,000. How they want to determine that? But that is how he operates. He turned back and he used that against the APMU parties. And that is the problem.
But my problem with it is that it's kind of laying blame at the feet of the small parties for the defeat.
For the defeat.
When in fact the administration did a lot of things that caused the downfall. Right?
But, my view is that the defeat is a more complicated analysis. Mm-hmm. And people are going to vary in that. But this thing about the 7,000 votes, man, is a practical, straightforward matter. We developed the argument to deal with the AFC, never to be applied to the APMU parties, because it is inappropriate and can't be applied. And you can't stand up as a leader, man, and tell the country and the world we're telling them, and call parties cardboard parties. You're calling people you work with for about 10 years cardboard parties, even if you recognize that they're not as strong as they ought to be. You have to have respect for the APMU, man. People in town of the PUP making you look like fools. All because of his utterance. Okay? And, you know, for the WPA, it is not about electoral spoils. I want to make this thing very clear. It is about principles, consultation, because our understanding of politics is that you have no spoils to give if you don't win votes. And you win votes through policies and programs. And the problem with the APMU we experience, it doesn't allow the WPA and small parties to contribute effectively to programming and ideas. It's hard to determine the parliamentary agenda, to get things on the WPA onto the parliamentary agenda. The big party, the PNC and the AFC, could more get their matters done. And we got to make this thing clear. The coalition was more democratic between the APMU and the AFC. There's the coalition, and people sometimes get mixed up, but we use these terms loosely. The coalition in strict political terms is not WP and the AFC or gap of the AP. The coalition is APMU, AFC. That is the coalition. And the coalition between, the relationship between the APMU and the AFC was more democratic, okay, than the relationship between the APMU parties in the APMU. In the house, the APMU, the bullyism and the lack of consultation and the undemocratic behavior was far stronger than what the AFC would have experienced in the coalition. And simply because they hold 40% of the power, and simply because they could have bring down the government anyhow. So even if the PNC didn't like them, you had to develop a relationship with the AFC which is more principled and which is more respectful. And I said perfect, and the AFC had to speak for itself. But I'm telling you, in the coalition, there was more democracy at the level. The biggest problem was in the APMU itself, among the 5 APMU parties. Okay? So this problem that we're raving about is not with the AFC. This is an in-house problem, the family matter. This is the APMU family in crisis. And this is a family matter. And this part of the family said we had enough. We had enough. If in 10 years we can resolve those principal positions upon consultation, upon how to get things on the parliamentary agenda, okay? Simple things, what we expect out of a victory, whether we're in opposition or in government. Let me simple, straightforward. For 10 years we're trying to sort that out. And if you're trying to sort out those basic, elementary political problems, not massive, those are not complex political problems. Those are elementary ABC political problems, man. Whereas walk out in a domino club. It is because the next partner doesn't want to resolve the problem. And I'm saying all these things so that people could understand the dynamics. When we set up the APMU, we recognize that, look, the WPA-PNC relationship could create some problems. But we didn't want, if the WPA and PNC got some problems, it spill over to the APMU. You understand? As the 2 major parties, we felt that, look, if we got some problems, we agreed to what we call a bilateral. That if developments develop between 2, we want to go over to the APMU and create problems there. And each party could call for bilateral and discuss the problems. And we called for that 2 times. The first time we called for it, they come, we discuss the problem, they said, then get on back to you. 2 years passed, then get on back to you. Then the WPA, another crisis developed in the WPA, said, what are we going to do? Some people say, let me invoke the bilateral thing. Some people, executives say, look, man, it's a waste of time. Then people, last time they said they're going to respond, and 2 years passed and they didn't respond. But the consensus in the executive was try it again. We try it, they come, Granger them come, we talk, we show them, they say, I'll get back to you. 5 years pass and then get back to you. Over 5 years, 7 years pass, they get back to you. I mean, I'm showing you all of this to show that even when we got mechanisms in place to deal with political problems as mature people, they didn't care. They didn't want to deal with these problems. They take the WPA for granted because they believe because of the WP analysis, that we put the country's interests first before the party. And because in our analysis, the PPP is the worst thing to happen to Guyana. For ethnic relations, so every single thing in this judgment. Okay? But despite the judgment, WPA said power sharing is the solution. But because they know of our principal position on that, they think they could take advantage of it. The WPA ain't going to be. You could treat them how they like. They so dislike the PPP. They're so concerned about the country that they ain't going to be. You could do what you like. And that is how contemptuous it got.
But the contempt spilled over to the PNC itself.
Well, I don't want to deal with PNC
No, but we gotta make it clear, because I mean, the disgruntledness, non-consultation and disregard also spilled over to the PNC itself. So something was wrong somewhere.
Yeah, but my brother, PNC business is PNC business. We got to look after WPA business. And I have to tell you up front, long before the elections, that she looking after PNC business. You see, and we don't want to get into the PNC internal problems. You know, that is their problems and they got to work it out. And we don't really want to get caught up in that. You know, so those are some of the reasons that led to us. Because after 10 years, you see, and I want to say it in a way that ordinary people understand. The WPA is in a relationship with the APM for 10 years, 2 election cycle. And if you go in we get 1 seat when we start, and we did 10 years, we can't get 2 seats, then you're going to stay 15 years with 1 seat. It is better you go on your own and try to build back your electoral history, and then you deal with, hope that constitutional reform will come, where we're going back to 1964, where we could have post-election coalitions. Because, you see, it is the Constitution that ties the small parties to big parties, because according to how we used to interpret the Constitution, is that you couldn't contest elections on separate lists and then try to form a coalition like in 1964. The Constitution changed them. So you had to make a coalition before. And because of that device, small parties had to join some big party. But I don't know who is the wise guy who look at the Constitution and found out that, look, that is not the only option. You could have a post-election agreement, a prior election agreement between parties. That you tell GCOM that, look, we're going to operate from a joint term. And you could contest separately. And then you go, at the end of the elections, you come bring your votes together as a coalition, and you could get into parliament and you could do your business. We didn't know, no, I didn't know about that. And all of that, I think, is a kind of game changer for the political engagement. But after we build in the APMU, nobody don't build something for 10, 50 years and then you want to block it up. But if we build the APMU, we help you to get power. And when you get power, you throw away the power. You throw away the power. This is what the PNC do, they throw away the power. I mean, let me be smart. They're like a dog on the bone. You know, dog and bone story in school? A dog got a meat in his mouth. He walking over a bridge over a river or a stream. He see your own shadow with another dog with a bone. And he think he wonder. He want, and he real bone drop in the water and he lose everything. That's what happened to them. In trying to get everything for the PNC, play down the WPA, play down the small parties, promote the dominance of the thing. We create the condition for the PPP to beat us. We create the condition for the PPP to turn to Indian Guyanese and say, this here, okay, is the return of the PNC. That is what they've done. And then when you're in trouble now, you got the last chance as a president and you have presidential power. You have the last chance to say, look, the PPP rigged these elections, and we're not going to, agree to nothing short power sharing. So you could protect your constituents. You could protect the African community. You could protect those Indians and Amerindian comrades who join with us. Okay? Now we throw everybody to the wolves. And the WPA must take cognizance to that. And we have to rethink our position. Right? And even though we're in the process of studying the country and trying to see how best we could, because at the end of the day, you still got to talk about defeating the PPP. You still got to talk about defeating the PPP. And we know that we can't allow the PPP to rule for 40 years. Jack don't tell you you can stay there for 40 years. So you still have the political challenge to defeat the PPP. And we're not stupid political people. But we can't operate business as usual. It can't be business as usual. And I'm saying this, that the African community is responsible for PPP, PNC behavior. Because if they used to speak out and tell the PNC you're treating the WPA and the small parties badly, it might have stopped. And as much as me and Carbon is friends, Robert never publicly engaged this matter. No PNC. Carberry, which he and Trotman spent hours and months building the APMU, getting the documents thing. He knows the rules, he knows the intention. He never write one letter in the press and saying, Granger, no, man. So for the PNC itself, even from the past leaders and the active leaders, something with the party. Nobody wants the leaders in position. And he doing things. Everybody shut them out. So our comrades were asking me, y'all tell me y'all be working with the progressive section of the PNC. What were they doing, Alio? Where the progressive there? None of them be writing a letter in your defense. You know, so those are the kind of situations as in the context of that. And I'm saying it clear. And I want the Indian community to understand, and I want the African community to understand. The WPA attitude in this is to find a solution in this country where neither race dominate each other. The PPP have power, therefore the Indian community is insulated. They got power. The African American community got no power. And therefore we got to throw energies to try to defend those communities and to force the PPP to some historical compromise. We don't know exactly what form it can take, but this is our commitment. So this struggle here is not simply a struggle for WPA and spoil some elections. This is more than that. But the elections is the moment, because elections done, certain things follow, you got to go to parliament, therefore these matters come up. But the fundamental issue is governance, is consultation, it is respect for one another as political players, okay? It's a sense that if you're going to win a political battle, you got to discuss tactics, you got to discuss politics. If you're not discussing politics, you can't win a political battle. And those are the fundamentals, because the victory, to defeat the PPP, those things we have to fix right. If I can't trust you and you can't trust me, if you can't, up now we see the state in the polls in the elections. We in the APMU, they tell it, and I mention these things because I got to say it, because PNC people come to WPA, what money I get for the campaign? What's party won't money again? Sharma party got a television station. Every single day Sharma got some program supporting the APMU. For 365 days or 5 years. Even if he put money at the election time, there's not money they're putting into the APMU. The WPA pay for this program out of your own pockets. Being how much money, but this program is dedicated to the APMU and to promoting us to victory. Isn't there a political contribution? And they collect money in the name of the APMU. We have never seen a cent. We have never seen even a record, a financial statement. We never question it because we assume, and we got the people must know, none of the small parties in the APMU ever was being allotted $1, okay, to them, to improve themselves and to do the work. And we don't mind, because we feel that elections are expensive, and so whatever money we collect as APMU, we assume it's going for the election purse. So you can collect money in the name of the APMU, keep it there, you have it, and then election time you turn to the APMU party and say, well, how much $1 million I got to put here? I mean, it is totally unfair. It is indecent. You collect your money in the name of the APMU. It is not being used for no other cause. I don't even think the PNC get any money from it. It is money that is going to use for the election fight. So you can't now election time come to me and tell me what money I put in. I make this a big issue. I mean, these are the kinds of on-principle realities you have to deal with.
All right, Ogun, it's time has caught up with us. It's been a
Very
pleasure. Yeah. Having you expressing these sentiments because a lot of people out there, some of the comments, make it seem as though, you're really unjustified in the decision that the party would have taken. But I hope that this will clear up a lot of the misconceptions that are out there. To the people who have been watching this program, I want to say thank you for being with us, and we see you next week, same time, same channel, for another program of Walter Rodney Groundings. Good night.
When I look at where I'm coming from, I know I'm blessed, and I close my eyes and smile. Sometimes I feel like the richest man in Babylon, and I've done my best, so everything's alright inside. Oh, every morning I rise, I stare at the sun. I know it is a blessing. So when the evening comes, I lift up my eyes to this, I'm blessed, oh man. With my two hands in the air, as far as I can.